Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Guru Maharaj ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so is everybody got a bag packed? We're going on a journey. Anybody got packed lunch? You're gonna need it. So
I have to listen to you first and then try to start packing.
You're listening first and then pack.
You're going to tell me what is going to happen, so I have to listen first, okay?
Good answer.
No, Prabhu, I won't follow.
This is a journey we don't want to do. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we want to look at this journey, because it's something that we really, really want to avoid. And the only way to avoid it is by actually becoming very serious in our Krishna consciousness and become, with the mercy of Guru Maharaj and Prabhupada, become pure devotees. But it is quite a journey. So firstly, I'd like to seek your good wishes and your blessings so that we go on this virtual journey without actually going on the real journey. And I wanted to seek the blessings of Radha and Krishna and Gaunitai and the Guru Parampara, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, so that they can guide us, so that we don't actually fall into the trap of this journey, and don't let us take our eyes off the mission, the goal. So we can start with this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 16. Brahma Bhuvanaloka Punar Avartino Arjuna Mama Pitya Tu Kaunteya Punar Janmana Vidyate.
One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna.
So very, very nice verse. Krishna is basically saying that we won't come back here if we attain his eternal abode. Hang on a minute. Wrong translation. Wrong translation. I was just checking if I was alert. And obviously I'm not. So actually this verse says, from the highest to the lowest. After 16. Oh yeah, good. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest. So from Brahmlok down to our place and then further down. All are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So once we go back to the spiritual world, we won't come back here. So this is an important point to remember. And of course, I swapped it around, didn't I? Okay. This is the next verse, which, how do we attain? How do we attain Krishna's world? Janma karma chame diviyam evam yo veti tatvata tvakta punar janma naiti mameti soarjuna. So you might as well read this verse. Read this one.
One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna.
Okay. So let's look at the journey. First, we look at the journey from the spiritual world down into this world. Spirit soul, in its pure state, eternally resides in the spiritual world, in association with the Supreme Lord and his associates. Okay? And we've been through this a few times. This is the material world here, and we come from the spiritual world. This is Golok Vrindavan. This is Vaikuntha. Within the spiritual world, there's unlimited worlds with unlimited transcendental pastimes that take place between the devotee and the Lord. Unlimited. These are the Vaikuntha planets. We can't even count how many Vaikuntha planets there are, how many expansions of Lord Narayan there are. Unlimited, and unlimited number of jivas and souls. Similarly, in Golok Vrindavan, which is where this is, unlimited number of jivas serving the divine couple. And we come from this world into this crazy world here, the material world. How do we do that? Why do we do that? How does the soul descend into the, it's supposed to be material world actually. Hang on a minute, something's not right. Something's not right. Something's gone a little stray here. I think I've deleted one of the slides. Anyway, the point is, at some point, we became envious of the Supreme Lord. And that envy was in the form that we could see the Lord being worshipped very beautifully. And he was accepting that worship. And for some reason, we decided, we had a thought, what is it like to be worshipped by the like the Supreme Lord? What is it like? That thought was enough. The Lord fulfills the desires of the living entities. That one thought has led to this material world being created. That one thought has taken us from the spiritual world into the material world, in most cases. There are situations where in the spiritual world, sometimes due to lila, due to wonderful transactions between the Lord and the devotees, and between the devotees and the devotees, there's sometimes cursing goes on, some sort of, oh, you're going to go to the material world. But after a short while, they're back again in the spiritual world. But generally, most of the living entities in this world come here because there is some little envy in their heart as to why is it that the Lord is enjoying and I'm not. So the Lord has created this world where we can try to lord it over. We could try to become the Lord. And generally speaking, most people endeavor is to become the master of their situation. It may be a small situation, maybe a big situation, maybe ruling a country, maybe being in a little family. But the mood and the mentality is that I want to control this situation, become the master. And unfortunately, because we're associating with a temporary world and we are eternal living entities, it's not a compatible situation. And the living entity is never able to control because it's thinking I can control and be happy. It's never able to control. It's never going to be happy because everything changes, especially at the time of death. Even before that, things change. But at the time of death, there are such big changes that the whole scenario completely shifts. So the soul can never be eternally happy in this material world. It's just not compatible with the psyche of the soul. The psyche of the soul is, it's eternal, it's looking for happiness. It had happiness, spiritual world. It's come into this world because it had some envy of the Supreme Lord. And in this world, it's never going to find this happiness because it's always being undermined because this world is perfectly imperfect. It's perfectly constructed to be completely imperfect. It will never give us what we want, happiness, because it's very temporary by its very nature. So how does the soul enter into the material world? He's very potent. As soon as the soul comes from the spiritual world, he's very potent, very, very strong, because he's just come from the spiritual world. So he may well be appointed to the post of Lord Brahma, who is the secondary creator of our world, because he's very potent, very powerful. But even Lord Brahma, we know in the Bhagavatam, he has to meditate for thousands of years before he can work out how to create, because the Lord will give him that information after his meditation. So you can see that the living entity, even in the post of Brahma, is limited, subject to the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But still, he's very powerful, because as soon as he gets the mercy, he's able to create this world. Right? So it's a very powerful position. And here he is. He is Lord Brahma, and he is basically in charge of creating all of this world. Okay. So generally what happens is, from the position of Brahma, after the end of Brahma's life, because of pride, the person who was Brahma usually glides down into the lower levels of material life. That means he's Brahma this lifetime, then he may go down to Satyalok and become one of the Munis or become a Tapasvi, and then he'll gradually fall further down because of pride. Our Lord Brahma is different, right? Because he's coming from the bottom up. When you're coming from the top down, pride sets in. You haven't experienced yet the humbling position of this material world. You haven't experienced that yet. So we, because of that pride, we glide down into the lower regions of material life. So as I mentioned, our Brahma is actually pure devotee, because he's come up from the 8.4 million species of life. He understands that this world is temporary and full of misery. That's why he's a pure devotee. So the living entity continues in the material world, getting different bodies according to its karma, desires, and consciousness, going up and down from animal life into human life, sometimes into demigod life, up and down this 8.4 million, 84 lakh, it's called, species of life. When one attains a human form of life, which we have, thank goodness, we get the opportunity, the best opportunity, to regain our original consciousness through engaging in bhakti yoga. And again, we can reestablish our relationship with God and go back to Godhead, return home. So this is where we want to be. So, but in between that, there's a whole big story. If the soul does not cultivate spiritual desires, it will only have material desires. And guess what? If we have material desires, we need a material body to function, to fulfill those desires. So if we want to show off our bodies, because that's our mood, our consciousness, our desires, material nature will arrange a body of a tree where we can be naked for thousands of years. Like to eat raw meat, maybe we get a body of a tiger. Like to sleep all the time, body of a bear. Eat all the time, body of a pig. All depends on consciousness. So throughout our lives, we have to prepare our next body. And since we are eternal spirit souls, we will never die. But we have to inhabit a body to fulfill our material desires. So whatever desires we cultivate and act on in this life, with the level of consciousness, prepares our next body. This is in the human form of life, because karma only impacts the humans. Because there are unlimited ways to live a life, there are unlimited possibilities for the next birth, because the next birth is dependent on this life. Whatever consciousness we develop in this life will be present at the time of our death. And that will take us to the next birth. There are heavenly and hellish destinations within this universe, and spiritual destinations outside this universe. There is a unvariegated region with no activity. There are 8.4 million species of life, types of bodies, according to mentality and consciousness within this universe. There are living entities on every planet with bodies suitable for the environment there. So we have to understand that our material consciousness will keep us here. If we develop spiritual consciousness, we'll go back to the spiritual world. Once we leave this body, then the decision where we go, it's out of our hands. It's made by material nature, what body we get. And relatives, well-wishers who are left here may be able to have some influence over these events. But we don't have any. It's finished. As soon as we leave this body, we have to suffer the results of our actions in this life. We have all our chances to make choices in this life as a human being. And once this birth is over, we are simply in the system again. And the process is automatic without any consideration of our desires or pleas. In the same way, it's like a judicial and penal system in any country. Once you are arrested, you go to trial. If convicted, you are sentenced. Regretting your criminal activity doesn't absolve you from guilt, nor does charitable work performed while under trial. You broke the law and you will be punished. So it's the same scenario. The living entities in species lower than humans, due to their lower understanding of metaphysical concepts and total lack of morality, aren't subject to this arrangement. No law of karma impacts the animals. They simply take one birth after another through the different species until they attain a human birth. This system is very well organized, detailed, and very fair. It's been running for a long time, so there are no bugs in the program. Every living entity you see has landed up in the body they have by this process, including ourselves. And as we work our way through this life, our next life is being put together for us. And at the time of death, we are transferred through the agencies of material nature to all that awaits us, to all that which awaits us. So what happens at the point of death? Krishna explains, whoever at the time of death, end of his life, quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. This is a rare soul, right? This is in chapter 8, text 5. And then the next verse, he says, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So death can be extremely painful. The dying person experiences a pain that is equivalent to 40,000 scorpions biting simultaneously. This is in the Garud Purana. So if you can imagine, I can't even imagine one scorpion bite, let alone 40,000 scorpion bites. So that's painful. Death is a final exam. So to make this end sweet and less painful, one must prepare for the final exam throughout our life. So what happens in sequence and when the soul is leaving the body? So what happens? Actually, there's nothing exact. Everything is tailor-made. How and when a person will leave the body, where he will go, depends on his qualities, gunas, his karma. Qualities means the consciousness, the level of desires, joined with the interventions by others through blessings, prayers, rites. Generally, there are three types of people. Those who are devotees of the Lord, where will they go? Back to the Lord, to Vaikuntha, because they remember God at the end. Those who do good karma, they will go to heaven. Those who do pious activities, but are inclined to do deeds that are not good for them, they will go to hell. They'll get credit for the pious deeds, no doubt about it. But because the inclination is always to be sinful, they are regarded to be demoniac. They will go to hell. In Garud Puran, there are many chapters on different types of impious acts and inappropriate actions.
Not inappropriate, appropriate action.
One sees at the end of life, we will see everything flash before us. So we will remember what is dear to us, what we have done in our life. If we've focused totally on the Lord all our life, then that's what will appear at the end of our life. If we focus on the family, then we will be worried about the family. They're the most dear to us, so we'll be concerned about them. That will keep us in this world. If the person is very attached to his body, he may remain in a coma for some time, trying to postpone the exit. Several days and hours before death, the person enters the terminal phase. Often it has the form of terminal restlessness, which is a medical term. And actually this is from medical journals. He may see his dead ancestors and friends. That's not in the medical journal, that's in Garud Puran. As well as specific devatas, those who perhaps he's been worshipping throughout his life. May communicate with them, which hospital staff and relatives present would consider delusion. So they'll be talking, they'll be trying to talk to these personalities. The body then generally turns cold, starting from extremities. This is due to the detachment of the prana and the subtle senses, part of the subtle body from the parts of the subtle body from the gross body. This is from the Upanishads. There are mental symptoms, strong loss of interest in life, dull outlook on life, become very morose, can't taste anything, close people are distant, inevitable, something inevitable is going to happen, and a desire to repent. That's a time when I wish I hadn't done that and this. Feeling of eternity. Physical symptoms, the bones become prominent as a flash, as well as eyes start to sink in, the nose becomes thinner and sharper, the look becomes absent, so you're looking but you're not looking. Facial gestures disappear, the body becomes unfamiliar and wooden. So these are the sort of symptoms one would experience when one is getting closer to the time when we will leave this body. Generally, person refuses food and also drink. If there are pets, especially dogs and cats, they have an idea there's something going on. They have a sixth sense. If one dies without rectifying all one's impious acts before dying, then one suffers more after death before going to Yamaraj. That's what we're going to look at. So this point about if we don't rectify the wrongs we've done in our life, then there's going to be suffering. Thus, in Vedic tradition, the husband and the wife, they take vanaprastha, which is a semi-retired life, and they go to religious places. They bathe in the holy waters, they feed the brahmanas, the gomatas, the poor, and they reduce their karma that way, impious karma. Of course, nowadays, generally people don't believe in that because they don't believe the soul suffers after that. They want to just enjoy as much as possible. They don't even believe there's a soul. The idea is just to let the body enjoy. Don't worry about the afterlife if there isn't one. The exit of the soul itself happens through one of the 9 bodily openings. So we have 9 bodily openings. The nostrils, 2, the ears, 2, mouth, 5, that's 5, the eyes, 6, 7, and then the genitals, 8, 9. Those who are impious leave the body from the bottom gates, the genitals, and the anus. And those who are pious leave the body from the upper 7 parts, gates. One who departs from the anus and genital goes to the lower regions, wherein one who departs from the upper portion of the body goes to the higher regions. Those who depart from the top of the skull, from the hole known as the Brahmarandra, the place where the 3 bones in the skull meet, will attain the region of Brahman. So they'll exit this world. And if you feel your head on the top towards the end, there's a soft part. It is said that those yogis who are very powerful can raise the soul, raise themselves right up to the prana, the life air force, right up through the skull, and they can burst out. In fact, there is a life story of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's grandfather, I think. His grandfather passed away in that way. He was sitting in meditative form and the soul burst out of his skull. Very powerful. If a person is impious and sinful, the messengers of Yamraj called the Yamadutas approach. Their characteristics are as follows. They are fierce, horrible looking persons with twisted features, copper red flaming hairs that stand on air, black in complexion, frightening to behold. They appear at the deathbed of the person in question and drag him forcibly from the body with ropes and chains. When the Yamadutas, they're called the Yamadutas, agents of Yamraj, are pulling the soul at that time, the person is unable to speak, and you can see a scared expression on his face. This scene so frightens the person, he literally dies of fright. There's some pastimes, the stories to confirm this. From the scriptures, there's the pastime of Ajamil, which is in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Ajamil was a Brahmin boy, very good boy for the first 18 years of his life. He was sent to the jungle by his father to get some wood. When he was in the jungle, he saw a very beautiful woman and he became attracted to that woman, so much so that he left his parents, he married that woman, had 10 children with her. But he, in order to sustain himself, he became a robber, a thief, and he did all sorts of things. At the age of 88, it was time for him to die. He had a young son called Narayan, who he was very attracted to, because everybody else left him. He was 88. He was pretty much bedridden, and everybody left him. His wife left him. His other sons and daughters left him. Only had his little boy Narayan. He saw the Yamaduts. They came for him. And he shouted out for his son, Narayan. Narayan! So the Yamadutas were going to capture him. They were there with the ropes and all that. I have a picture. Ah, there you go. There you go. There's the Yamadutas. They came for him. They were going to snatch him. They were literally in the process of taking him out of the body. When he called out Narayan, the Vishnu Dutas, the servants of Narayan, appeared. They looked like Narayan. They're not Narayan, they're his servants. They came and they said to the Yamadutas, "You cannot take him." Why? The Yamadutas asked. Because he has chanted the name of Narayan. So what? He was not chanting the name of Narayan, the Lord. He was chanting the name of Narayan, his son. The Yamadutas, the Vishnu Dutas said, doesn't matter. Even if he was chanting the name of his son, he was chanting the name of Narayan. And the name Narayan is transcendental. That protects him. And you have no right to him. Whilst this conversation was taking place between the Vishnu Dutas and the Yamadutas, Ajamil was listening, between them arguing. Eventually the Yamadutas left because the Vishnu Dutas are very, very powerful. And Ajamil had an awakening. He had a second chance. He realized the ways of his life were wrong. And he became a devotee of Vishnu from that day onwards. And he did penances on the Ganga. And after some time, he was liberated. The same Vishnu Dutas who came to protect him, came to collect him, to take him back to Vishnu, Lord Vishnu. So the Dutas, they went to Yamaraj and said, "What is this? Who are these Vishnu Dutas? And how is it possible that simply chanting the name of Narayan has protected that sinful Ajamil? And Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, said, don't touch those devotees, even if by mistake or because of bewilderment or illusion, they sometimes commit some sinful act. If they chant the names of the Lord, they are protected. Don't touch them. And he also told them, the Paramhamsas are exalted persons who have no taste for material enjoyment, who drink the honey of the Lord's lotus feet. My dear servants, bring to me for punishment only persons who are averse to the taste of that honey, who do not associate with the devotees, who are attached to family life and worldly enjoyment, which form the path to hell. So Yamadutas were, Hare Krishna, very clearly explained to that the devotees do not come to him, to the Lord of Death. The Yamadutas have no jurisdiction over those, over the Vaishnavas or those who chant the holy names of the Lord. But those who don't chant, those who are sinful, they're the ones that the Yamadutas can grab hold of. My dear servants, bring to me those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties towards Krishna, Vishnu, which are the only duties in human life. Please bring me all such fools and rascals. So somebody could say, okay, that's just a story from the scriptures. Who knows if the scriptures are telling the truth? Because we know we have faith, but not everybody has. But there are modern day encounters with the Yamadutas, and there are many, many encounters. I've just given one example here by somebody called, this is a devotee called Vaidya Das. One day, a freakish artist came to the temple with an Shri Upanishad book in his hands. And he told the devotee stories. I was looking for you people for 3 days. I am unbelievably glad I have finally found you. One day I bought this book. He couldn't even name its name and author, Prabhupada. He was just stammering something. And I tried to read it, but it was very difficult to understand. So many strange words. Therefore, I put it on the shelf and cared no more about it. I was drinking a lot of alcohol. One day, while lying drunk in my bed, I heard strange voices nearby. It was something absolutely new. I was looking for the source and saw two persons, indistinct. They were speaking about me, about my life, how sinful it was. They were recounting all my sins in great detail, which I didn't even remember myself. And also a few good things. Finally, they came to the conclusion, he must go to hell. I was screaming in protest. I did not want to go to hell and didn't know what is going on at all. But anyway, at once, one of them put a stringent rope on my neck. I tried to get rid of it and run away, but to no avail. The rope was very tight. I was almost finished, but suddenly a cover picture of this book, Sri Upanishad, with Lord Keshav and Sheshnag appeared before my eyes. It was actually not picture, but reality. The snake was moving, and out of a sudden, a flame emanated from his many mouths. Totally bewildered about it, I asked those persons, what does this all mean? They answered, this is just the hell where you're going to go. But all of a sudden, everything disappeared, and I woke up in my bed completely shocked. Immediately, I stopped drinking and smoking and tried to find you devotees, to find explanation about all of this. I beg on my knees, let me stay here somewhere. So this is just one story. There's many, many stories like this. How people have seen these horrible looking creatures about to snatch them from their body. So I haven't put many, I just put that one. You can Google this and you'll probably find near-death experiences or something like that. You can find these stories. Oh, in fact, I've got it written here. There's a book written At the Hour of Death in 1977 by a couple of these guys. And they also describe these crazy creatures coming for you. And in this case, they found this girl who was saying she was on the brink of death, and people had come to put a rope around her and take her away. And then she obviously didn't die, but later on they found these rope marks on her legs. Very interesting. Okay. The pure devotee is always with the Lord, but a pious person who is not completely fixed in Krishna consciousness, is old age, afflicted with disease and unfavorable health conditions, knowing death to be near, should be fearless and alert and should make reparation for any sins committed, knowingly or in ignorance. So if we find ourselves in this situation, we need to do something. Worship Vishnu in the form of Shalagram, give a gift of a Gomata, Godan they call it. This is very useful, especially later on. We'll see how one can pass over a river of death if one has donated a cow in one's life. Worship, this is whilst we're not well, we know things are going to happen. So if we've done no worship during our lifetime, it's not too late. We can still do something. Worship with fragrant substances, flowers, red saffron, tulsi leaves, very important. Worship with incense, lamps, offering food to the Lord, offering sweets to the Lord. Give some gifts to the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. Do this before it's too late. Feed them with Mahaprasad. And most importantly, recite the Maha Mantra. So if one is not inclined towards this bhakti marg, at least do this so that this hellish situation doesn't confront us. You should call to mind and listen to the names of Krishna and Vishnu, the name of Hari, come within the range of hearing, take away the sins. This takes away the sins of men. Relatives should not mourn. They should chant the names of the Lord. Those who recite the names of the Lord, of Krishna, near the deceased are called relatives. They are actually friends and relatives. Of him who gives voice to the auspicious name Krishna, tens of millions of great sins are quickly reduced to ashes. Even the dying Jamil reached the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, by pronouncing the name Narayan, which had been given to his son. How much more than its effect when it's pronounced with faith? Hari, meditated upon even by one who has evil thoughts, takes away sins. Fire burns even though accidentally connected. So even if we do it accidentally, it still has an impact. Just like the fire will burn us even if we don't know what it is. Sinful man is not able to sin while the power of the name Hari is uprooting the sins. This is the point. Bring the man who denies, O messengers. Do not bring the man who meditates on Hari. So we've sort of been through that. Let's move on, otherwise we're going to run out of time. So we're looking now at the death situation. When the soul leaves the body or is dragged out by the Yamadutas, we know this event as death. The gross body no longer occupied by the soul. According to the Pindopanishad, the soul no longer has a physical body after death, but wanders in a subtle body. And we'll explain, the subtle body is the mind, intelligence, and ego. So the body is gone, the gross body, but the soul is still wandering. It's carried by this subtle mind. So within us, there's two bodies, the gross and the subtle. Subtle is made up of mind, intelligence, and ego. And death involves, it's a period of contamination because at that time, people are very emotional. So one is recommended, don't read the Holy Scriptures at that time because you're too emotional. Don't do yagyas, don't worship the deities because you're not in a fit state. But if you have a vow that you're going to do this, read every day, worship it, then you should continue that vow, but don't be emotional. And the period is different for different varnas. 10 days for the Brahmin, 12 days for the Kshatriya, 15 days for the Vaishya, and 30 days for the Shudra. And if death takes place to a distant relative, then 3 days. If one is fixed in the Krishna consciousness, one does not have to follow this period of contamination. So what happens to these 3 types of people when they die? The devotee of the Lord, he's taken to the spiritual world. Ajamil is an example. Dhruv Maharaj is another example given in the scriptures. A plane was waiting for him when he left the body and he went to the spiritual world. The pious, they begin the journey to Yamaloka, not to be punished. They still go to Yamaloka, but they see him in a different light. They don't see him in the ghastly feature which the sinful will. The sinful begin the journey. But after 11 days, generally speaking, the impious soul takes time to understand and accept that emotional attachment with the loved ones was with its previous body. So he's still very attached to the body. He's hovering around. And especially if the relatives are crying, that will keep the soul even more attached. He doesn't want to leave. And it's reckoned that this is for a period of about 11 days. Now, so that the deceased does not wander like a ghost in the ether, one must make offerings to him. Pindan, yeah, thank you. During the contamination period, one offers the deceased water every day to make the disentanglement process easier for the soul. On the 11th day, after the demise of the house is purified, offerings are made, and 11 Brahmins are fed, if possible. Even one is fine. It's explained that as soon as the main Brahmin, the main Pujari eats and is finished eating, the Yamadutas come and take the soul away on the 11th day. This is all, by the way, from the Garud Purana. So what happens during this 11 days? In general, 3 days are spent in water, 3 days are spent in fire, 3 days are spent in space, and 1 day is spent traveling on the wind. On the 11th day, the ceremony is, pindan is made, small bowls of rice, tarbin, are offered to the forefathers and the deceased rather. And at that time, the priest who eats and he leaves, at that time, the Yamadutas take the soul away. The eldest son usually performs this ritual, and he does this every 11 months.
No, every month.
Every month, sorry, for 11 months. Thank you. And along with 2 Shraddh ceremonies during the year. This pin ceremony ends with the final offering on the 12th month. And that enables the preta. The preta is what is the soul without the body, to obtain the body of Prithu, forefather. So he'll attain a proper body and enter the heavenly planet, Prithulok, which is ruled by Yamaraj. So here we go. We are somewhere here. And this is Prithulok, this is Narakalok, the hellish planets. So the heavenly and the hellish planets are sort of together. The heavenly planets where the great sages live are up here. Tapalok, Janalok, Mahalok. Heavenly planets, Swargalok, are here. But when the soul passes away, he is taken in a direction of Yamlok, towards Prithvilok, or the hellish planets, depending on whether it's been pious or impious. And then these are the planets of the demons. Well, these planets are actually very opulent. The demons live very opulently. without worshipping the Lord. But when their opulence is finished, they also end up in the hellish condition. Of course, such rituals do not erase the karma accumulated by living entity. We should understand that the Shraddha offerings will help this jiva on the journey, but it won't destroy the karma. That karma is stuck with the living entity. The Garud Purana explains that the offerings of the pind helps to reform this body, get another body. And it's explained that every month, the offering that's made by the son or by the priest on behalf of the deceased or the forefathers helps reform a body. So in first offering, the head is developed. Second offering is the eyes, etc. Cheeks, third one. Heart for the fourth. Waist, etc. for the fifth. Like this, and so on. So in this way, these offerings actually help the soul. Doesn't eradicate the karma, but it helps him on the journey. And part of the debt that the children owe the father and mother is they've given them life, so the debt is repaid partly. The debt to the mother is never repaid, but the debt to the father is repaid by performing the Shraddha offerings every month. After the 11th month, the soul begins the journey to Yamaloka. Yamaloka is 86,000 yojanas from Earth, which is about 688,000 miles. Every day, the soul travels roughly 2,000 miles. It takes about 348 days to reach Yamaloka. So we've got 11 days, which it hovers around the body, generally speaking, and then 348 days. So that's 359 days in total. The soul is on a journey. And this is just a guide in the Puranas. Every individual will have a tailor-made journey depending on the karma it has done in its life. Those souls that have been pious have an easier journey than those who have been impious. Just like if you're traveling in Bharat, you will know that if you're in an AC compartment, a train with an AC compartment, it's very comfortable. But if you're in sleeper class, that's really hard work. What happens on this journey? You pass through 16 cities, 16 zones before reaching Yamaloka. And Yamaloka is where the judgments are made. But on the way, the soul suffers because of its impious activities. So the first stop is Yamayapur. One reaches there after 18 days. There's a river filled with flowers. Those who have been impious are beaten with sticks and they do not get any shade. It's very, very hot. So the pind offering in the first month can be eaten by the soul at this place. Right? So one might be wondering, how can the soul eat? Right? But actually it gives the soul comfort. Some people offer umbrellas and things like that. And we'll see later on why they do that. Or shoes to the Brahmins. So the road here has 10 suns shining and the temperature is 50 degrees. It's very, very hot. The area is like a desert and there's no shade or slippers for the soul. Those who stop are beaten to make them move on. Therefore, many people offer an umbrella, clothes, slippers to Brahmins at this time to help the departed soul on his journey. This is very much, there's a lot of faith in this process in Bharat. Perhaps in this country, not so much. Even in Bharat, it's perhaps reducing. But this is what's described in the Garud Purana. And that's why people do these pind offerings, pindan. The next stop is Shauripur. And Shauripur is the younger brother of Yamraj, who resides in Narendra Bhavan. That's not the same as Narendra Modi, right? One has to get his attendance noted here.
His house.
The soul reaches this city in the second month, and the pin done in the second month is received by the departed soul here. Also important to understand, the pin is divided into 4 parts. 2 parts are for the protection of the covering of the subtle body. So the offering is split into 4 parts. 2 parts are for the soul. 1 part is for the Yamadutas. So even the Yamadutas need to be looked after, that's the word. And 1 part is for the nourishment of the temporary body. So if no pindan is done, or jaldan, no water, then the subtle body does not get any protection or any food. And the Yamadutas also don't get any food, so they become even more aggressive towards the soul. Thus the soul suffers even more. So this is quite aggressive. It's quite a heavy punishment. Now, we haven't gone through all of the, because there is not that much detail. Certainly I couldn't find. There's just little bits and pieces here and there. In Shailagam, they encounter rains of stones. Huge stones are rained upon the soul. And it's very, very painful, very much suffering there. And then there's other cities that they travel through. And then this one is very interesting. Vichitrinagar, where the river Vaitarani is flowing. Very dangerous river which smells horrible. And have to cross over it. Not over it, through it. 800 miles wide. That's really hard. But those souls who have done Godan, the gifting of cows in their lives, are carried in special boats across this river. So this is one of the advantages of doing.
The others have to swim through.
The others have to swim through. So there are all these other hells. 16 in total. Other cities, 16 in total. So after 348 days, you reach a place called Shyamnagari. And this is where the reports first is done of our deeds. And then eventually we come to Yamaraj. Yamaraj is there. Those who are sinful will see him in a very bad way. And Chitragupt is on the left-hand side here, actually. He's the one who's recording all the activities done by the soul. And this is the soul who's presented before Yamaraj. Judgment is made. You did this, you did that. And there's the Yamadutas with the dogs. Yamaraj's court is 32,000 miles wide, 14 doorkeepers called Shravanas. They have been listening to everything we've been talking about, and their wives are even more cleverer. You can't escape from these wives. In the spiritual world, Radharani is more smarter than Krishna. In this world, we know the wives are always more smarter than the hubbies. But it's also the case with the Yamadutas, or those gatekeepers, of Yamaraj. The wives are more clever. They have the ability to know our thoughts also. And those are recorded as well. So it's pretty heavy stuff. If anybody who has heard about Krishna or heard the Mahamantra in their lives, they're considered special. And a message is sent to Yamaraj about them. Yamaraj treats them with great respect. But those souls who have been impious, they are sent to Chitragupt and then to Yamaraj. To the impious soul, Yamaraj is dressed in black, holding iron club in one hand and death ropes in the other. His eyes are red and he has fangs. He's very high, very tall, 24 miles in height. For the pious soul, Yamaraj looks like a gentleman with a handsome form. Yamaraj welcomes the pious souls by getting up from his throne and gives them a seat. He knows the pious souls going to heaven, so he blesses them before sending them to heaven. The soul enters the court of Yamaraj, who consults with Chitragupt, the recorder of one's deeds. So Chitragupt reads out from the great register of worldly deeds called the Agrasandhani Akka. the Akashish records the wrongful and good actions the soul has performed in his or her life. Information obtained through the services of the Shavanas and the Shavanis. And then the Yamaraj will mete out the punishment. He condemns those who made terrible sins to hellish planets, and the righteous he will send to the planets of the forefathers and the heavenly planets. The Bhagavatam describes, there's hundreds and thousands of hells. It describes 28 prominent ones. I'm not going to go through them because we've run out of time, but I've given them here. I'll share the notes, just a little idea of the different types of hells one can go to where if one has done something wrong. Okay, how to avoid this scenario, the Yamadutas, is easy. Chant the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. If the person concerned, the deceased, has left the body, the soul has left the body, then when the body is being cremated, in Hinduism, cremation is the main way of how the body is destroyed. We can put these tulsi twigs. Tulsi is a very, very devotional plant. The holy basil. You can put these twigs into the coffin and then it's burnt, or into the arena where the burning is taking place. And that person will not face the Yamadutas. In fact, that person will attain Vishnu Lok. It may take some time because they've got their karmas to deal with still, but they are on their way. Even great sinners can be absolved of their sins if their bodies are cremated with tulsi twigs. If at the time of death one thinks of God and mutters his name, and if his dead body is later cremated with tulsi twigs, he will have no rebirths. Yamadutas would keep away from one whose dead body is cremated with tulsi twigs, and servants of Vishnu would come near. Would come near. If a light is burnt for Vishnu, with the tulsi stick, it would be equal to burning several thousands of lamps for Vishnu. This is very important. If when one makes the tulsi leaf into a paste and smears it on one's body, then worships Vishnu for one day, one would get the benefit of 100 ordinary worships, and the also benefit of doing 100 Godans. So these are just different things that are explained by the scriptures, how to avoid getting into this crazy situation. So that was it. That was a quick virtual day trip to Yamaloka, which we definitely want to avoid as much as possible. I hope nobody's scared to death. That wasn't the idea. The idea of this presentation really is we have to become very serious about our spiritual practices. Everybody here is on the spiritual path, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But in this world, we will be doing good things and we'll be doing crazy things as well. And we want to try to refocus ourselves so that, forget the good or bad, we do spiritual activities which will take us beyond this world, away from Yamaloka, into the spiritual world. And soon, next Friday, a month comes, 29 days, where we can, any bhakti performed is multiplied so many times more. It's like sale of the century. And any vrata, any vow we take during that month and fulfill that vow, it will count hugely towards us going back to the spiritual kingdom and avoiding hell. So the idea is we wanted to do this during the period of Shraddha because we're talking about the forefathers. but also with the view that we have a month coming up soon where we can intensify our spiritual practices and get unlimited benefit. So I'd like to thank the devotees for your attention and being with us. I've run over time. I hope you don't mind. What did Madhusudan Babu please share some realizations?
Hey, Haribol. Hare Krishna. Haribol. Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Maharaj. Yeah, it's not a journey that many people would like to be dwelling on or listening to or wanting to know, because we are so conditioned to thinking that, you know, we the body, when the body finishes, everything is finished.
Yeah.
Who cares what happens afterwards, or what's happened before, what's happened after. So we just, you know, very just wanted to go through the motions of the everyday life here on this planet, you know. But it's good to know all this, and then you've done a thorough research into Garud Puran and the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and all these scriptures give us knowledge. Some of the things you mentioned here, you know, it's obviously a journey that you wish or you hope that it's going to be a comfortable one for everyone. You know, we're not ready to prepare ourselves, knowing that, you know, some souls do crazy things on this planet and think that they're going to get away with it, but they can get away with it for a while. You know, it's like the law of the land. And in the country, you know, so many people want to break law and all sorts of things, but there are consequences. It's just a matter of time. If they do get caught, then they are dealt with, but they're always been looked after. But in the eyes of Krishna's laws, nobody's getting away with anything. Really, so many may try to get away with it. But when I was young, it's interesting because some of the things you mentioned in this presentation, when I was young, I used to, before I came across Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam and Prabhupada's teachings, and you know, years ago when I was a student, and I used to read some books by an author called Lobsang Rampa. He was in Canada, but he was a Buddhist follower, and he wrote a lot of things about the Tibet. And he was a young monk from Lhasa, which is obviously in Tibet, and Lhasa was the place where what's his name? Oh, forget now. The Buddhist leaders, you know, the Buddhist leaders are trained there. Dalai Lama. Yeah. So when the Chinese took over Lhasa and Tibet, they obviously threw him out and everything, and the Lhasa you know, Dalai Lama was given shelter in India, Bharat, which is Bharat gives shelter to everyone. They just welcome everyone, and so somehow he's still there. But in Lhasa, you know, the monks were trained into the Buddhist philosophy, and obviously they used to go through a lot of strict meditation, but there wasn't much knowledge maybe of Bhagavatam, but it's obviously Buddhist teaching, and Lord Buddha is Krishna incarnated anyway. We know from Srimad Bhagavatam. But when Lobsang Rampa was describing how his life was in Tibet and how he was trained as a young monk, and all these teachings, he was told that, you know, every action that everybody does is recorded in an Akashic record. Well, I first came across something called Akashic record. Akash means obviously ethereal space, ethereal, but obviously here you clearly describe who keeps the Akashic record of everyone. It's like everything is recorded, you know. Yeah, and everything is registered, everything is recorded. And the Akashic record is obviously what's referred to when the soul leaves. And I was fascinated by all those, you know, readings of Lobsang Rampa. He talked about the meditation processes and all that, which the Buddhists follow and everything, and something called the third eye, you know, which they get opened and they see a vision. But and then how to deal with material bodies. And when the bodies leave, obviously, Lhasa and Tibet, their places high up in the mountains. They don't have any room for preserving the body, or rather, you know, burying the bodies. So they don't have any land. They don't have much space where they can cremate. And so they would either cremate some souls, or the bodies would just be fed to the scavengers, you know, those, what are the birds they call them? What do they call them? They feed on the dead bodies, you know. They just throw them in.
Vultures.
Right?
The vultures.
Vultures.
Yeah, scavengers. Vultures. Yeah, that's right, vultures. So the bodies will be thrown to the vultures, you know, because soul is gone and they understand the body is to be got rid of somehow, whether you cremate it or bury it or this or that. But the whole idea of, you know, some cultures, you know, want to preserve their body, thinking body is the self, the body is all in all. There's no such thing as soul, so the body is preserved. They try to bury it, you know. You go as far as the Egyptian culture, where they used to, you know, the pharaohs were given all their gold and everything, and embalm the body, and their next journey they're going to take everything with them. Well, they never took everything, because, you know, after thousands of years, going to the pyramids, and you still find the things there, you know, so then nothing was taken. When Alexander the Great was given that, or he even said, he said, look, you know, out of my coffin, he said, just put 2 arms out and let the people know that I took nothing. I came with nothing and I'm taking nothing. But it doesn't mean that you're not taking anything. You are taking your karma with you. That's, you know, so the outcome will be there. But the journey here you've described, you know, we hope that we don't face Yamadutas. We hope that Vishnu Dutas come for us, but that's just, you know, something we can't be 100% guaranteed. But at least by having taken to spiritual path, we've chanting holy name, practicing throughout our life, you know, all the different things like Tulsi and all the Gomata and everything, you know, which are under the guidance of a proper bona fide spiritual master, like Prabhupada. You know, he's given all these things in the scriptures to guide us, you know, in our life, so that we, you know, have a safer journey, a better journey through to Yamaraj, and well, hopefully not to Yamaraj, but he's a devotee of Krishna, so he has a job to do. You know, that's his role. So when we say, you know, initially we all came to this from the spiritual world. Obviously, we had our own independent desires to try and fulfill, and whether that is out of envy of the Supreme Lord, which is what the scriptures say, or whether we were instructed, or sometimes like Lord Brahma, or, you know, what about the 4 Kumaras? They never wanted to come, but because there is a need for the progeny to be spread and the material world to be activated, as they say, you know, Lord Brahma has to, you know, try and increase the population somehow. So he instructed the 4 Kumaras to do that, but they didn't want to do it. So there is a process, obviously, to Kali Yuga. We we have limited time here, but you've done a thorough research here. I can only make certain comments because having listened to you and knowing from my experiences and how I can make other devotees who are here, maybe expand a little bit more or give my realization and understanding. But certainly there's a lot more to this, and this is quite a detailed process. I'm sorry I wasn't with you guys yesterday, but anyway, I hope others can make a comment if they have anything to say, you know. Thank
So there'll
you.
be lots of questions. So
Hey.
I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. So let's see. Anybody like to ask any questions? Thank you, Madhusudan Prabhu, for sharing.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Sam?
I've got so many questions to ask, but I'll just limit to just two. Where did you get this information from? What authority did you actually derive all this information from?
Mainly it's the Garud Purana, but the commentary on the Garud Purana. And it's a website called Deepika, www. I'll share it with you. That's got a...
Prabhu, I know about Garud Purana. I'm just conscious my brothers are there listening to it.
Okay. Good point. So
yeah, so I'm doing that on their behalf. Where did you get?
Yes, good question. The source of this information is from a person who is regarded as the literal incarnation of the Lord. His name is Vyasdev. Vyasdev is regarded to be an authority on all matters, spiritual matters and material matters. He has written the Vedas. And the Vedas is a very thorough, Ved means knowledge. Vedas is a very thorough book, a set of books running into billions of verses, which describe both the spiritual and material worlds. And in addition to the Vedas, he wrote the Puranas and the Upanishads. These are all spiritual texts to assist the understanding of the living entity, the Lord, and the relationship of the living entity to the Lord. One of those books is called the Garuda Purana. Garud is one of the carriers of the Lord, of Lord Vishnu. And Garud is a very kind-hearted personality. He's actually an eagle, but he's a very intelligent eagle. He asked the Lord Vishnu, all different questions in order to assist us of how we can become closer to the Lord. And some of his questions were centered around, in this world, if somebody is sinful, what happens to them? Out of compassion. So by asking these questions, and these questions and answers were recorded in this book called the Garud Purana, the idea of this book is to assist those living in this world to avoid these hellish areas of life, so that we can actually go back to the spiritual world, or even remain in this world, but at least not be situated in a hellish situation. So these books are written by the Supreme Lord himself in the form of Srila Vyasdev, and we consider them an authority. And the Vedas have huge authority. For example, one of the things the Veda says is cow stool, dung, is pure. Now we know any dung is not ever pure. When the scientists in the West looked at this cow dung about 40 or 50 years ago, they found antiseptic qualities in the cow dung. So what was written in the Vedas, that cow dung is pure, was confirmed by the scientists. And if you go to India, you'll see cow dung cakes made and put on walls. And so it basically confirms what is the truth in the Vedas. And what was is that okay, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the Pinda and the Shroud rituals, there are a lot of cultures which doesn't practice that. They don't practice that at all. So what will happen to their ancestors if they don't practice the Shraddh and the Pinda?
Basically, the Pindan is to assist the soul on the journey. If they don't do this, the soul won't get any assistance on its journey. It's not necessarily a big deal. It's just the soul suffers a little bit more. The problem is we have not fulfilled a debt. We owe a debt to our forefathers, especially to our mother and father. And if we don't do anything to help our forefathers and our parents, then it's regarded that we have not fulfilled a debt. Of course, the debt to the mother can never be extinguished because the mother does so much for the child. Unless one becomes fully God conscious. So for the cultures that, I mean, even Indian culture, not everybody does this, Sam. Like the Jews don't do it, the Buddhists don't do it. Even within the Hindu Sanatana Dharma community, it's becoming less. Vaishnavas have maintained somewhat this process. If one doesn't do it, we are not fulfilling a debt of love in one sense. We care for our mother and father. Why not do something for them? Gratitude. Do something for them. Whether it's true or not is a question of faith, right?
No loss.
Just like, but this is just like it's described. If you put a envelope through the post box, an authorized post box, you know it's going to reach its destination. So if we have the faith that if we do this, it will reach its destination, then it will. It will.
Indeed. I've got last one. Coincidentally, tomorrow is the Indra Ekadashi, and it's another chance for us to perform something to free our ancestors in hell. Yes. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
So what Ekadashi means is the 11th day of the waning and waxing moons, and on that day, it's regarded that sin resides in grains and beans. So basically, we try to avoid eating grains and beans on that day. So we can eat potatoes, we can eat fruits, we can have milk, so many different foods. But the idea is we do a little bit of austerity, and at the same time, the most important thing is we remember the Lord more. So by eating less, we don't substitute that by watching television more. Instead, we worship the Lord more, and we can dedicate all of the fruit of that austerity to our forefathers. We can say to the Lord, Mother Ekadashi even, please, any tapasya, any austerity I've done, any credit there is spiritually that is accruing to me, I would like you to transfer it to my forefathers, my father and mother, or uncle, auntie, grandmother, grandfather. And this spiritual benefit gets transferred to that person. And because we love those who've looked after us, this is not an obligation, but this is an act of love.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Edward, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, Prabhu. I'm Edward. I'm Samuel's brother.
Thank you for joining us, Edward.
Thank you, Prabhu. I hope everyone is doing fine.
Yeah, I think, well, thanks to the blessings of the Lord and to people like yourself who are committed to the
Lord. Okay, so grateful. Well, Prabhu, my question this evening is rather a little bit, I don't know even the right word to use. I want to know is, how old is the soul? I think one might be, wondering why is he asking this sort of question? Because we are meant to believe that the soul exists for a lifetime. But then it kind of baffles my mind, because what my little understanding is that when one dies, the flesh obviously fades away, but then the soul within, it goes wherever, where, and that I do not want to confuse myself. But the question I want to ask is,
How long?
Prabhu, how old is the soul, and how long does it stay around?
Okay.
That is my question this evening.
Nice question. Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yes, please.
Do you think God is fair? This might sound a really odd question.
Indeed. I believe God is very fair, because in his own wisdom, he knows exactly what he's doing,
Okay.
or whatever that he does. Yes.
And second question is, do you think he discriminates between anybody?
The question again, please, Prabhu.
Do you think God discriminates between one person and another?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Perfect answers. Why is one soul, one person, got a body which is able, fully functioning, and perhaps another person who has maybe a limb missing or something like that? That would indicate to me, if there was only one lifetime, one opportunity for the soul to attain the Lord, that there has been some discrimination taken place against that soul, because one soul is fully able and another soul has some disability, if you like. That means somebody up there in charge has been unfair. But we know, like you answered, God can never be unfair. He's equal to all. So the answer to that question, that dilemma, is that yes, in this life, somebody may be completely abled, another person may be disabled, but it's because of a previous existence. Because of a previous existence, something has led to one person being fully able, another person being disabled. The question about how long the soul lives is as old as God. How long does he continue to live? As long as God is present. And God is present eternally. The soul has been present eternally.
Okay.
Never was there a time, Krishna is saying to Arjuna on the battlefield, when you did not exist, nor all these kings before you, nor me. Never will there be a time when we cease to be. So the soul is eternal. And because the soul goes through different bodies according to Sanatana Dharma, according to its previous birth, it will get the reactions. So some punishment will be in the same life. So if I steal, I get caught, I get punished. If I kill, I don't get caught. Does that mean there's no punishment? No. You may not get caught in this life. So the punishment may take place in the next life. So somebody's in jail, or somebody is killed by somebody. That could be a punishment for their previous life. So the soul does not, according to Sanatana Dharma and Vedic philosophy, die when the body dies. The soul continues to remain. And the proof of that is, there's a Dr. Ian Stevenson. He was an American doctor, a researcher. He was a phenomenal person. He did a lot of research. You can Google him, Dr. Ian Stevenson. And he did research on reincarnation, how people remember their past lives. And some of these people are very young children who somehow can describe their previous villages, what families they were born in. They can identify their wife, they can identify where money was hidden. Some facts which no one can dispute because they're such young children, they can't make these things up. And it's been verified as well. So reincarnation exists. That indicates that the soul goes beyond one life. Some people can remember many lives going back. So according to Hinduism, the soul lives eternally. It's lived eternally. It continues to live eternally.
So Nabi, just to expand a little bit more on that, where you say, you know, this soul is eternal, and the question that what's your name? Sorry again.
Edward.
Edward. Yeah, sorry, Edward has asked, and it's a bit like you know, when we come onto this planet, we take birth and we've come into this life. It's a bit like when I was young. In this town, there was a cinema, and we couldn't afford to go to see the films. You know, we living in Africa in a small town in a village, there's only one cinema. We love to hang around there and look at the pictures of James Bond and wondering what this film is going to be about or whatever. But one day I was with my friends hanging around, and there's two ladies came out of the cinema, out of the film, and gave us their tickets and said, "Oh, here you are. You guys can go and watch. We don't want to watch it. We're fed up with that. You know, go and you guys can go and take our place." So we were excited. You know, obviously we took the tickets. We went in, sat down, but obviously we were halfway through the film, so we couldn't make what the story was all about. You know. And I came thinking, why is this guy shooting that guy? Why is he being punished for this? And why we couldn't connect the storyline very much. And so we had to make out in our own mind, you know, so why this guy is suffering? Why is he having a good time? He seems to be loaded with a lot of money and all that. So it's a bit like that, you know, we come onto this planet and we live for about 100 odd years. And then we are in the middle of so many different activities that have gone on in the past, in the future, and we can't connect the storyline. Whose karma has been what? Why is he suffering? Why is he not suffering? So we try to make sense of it, but it's a little bit challenging for us. And we're only trying to deal with our own karma, really. And we are dealt with the hand of the cards according to our own karma. We are the product. I am sitting here with whatever consequences. I'm a product of my own karma, really, whether good, bad, or whatever. I don't know yet. Whatever, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But that's how it goes. And talking about reincarnation, all that, I know somebody who does past life regressions, you know. See, the hypnosis and all that. And one day that person, I mean, I won't tell the person because it's very, very close to me. And I know, you know, she does these past life regressions, and it was done on her as well, and had an experience of being kneeling down with the hands tied like this and ropes being chains and all that attached to it, and kneeling down in front of some kind of a majestic person and making a promise that I will repay my debts or whatever, and then I will definitely go and help a lot of people. So he said, somehow I keep feeling that my life is a mission to help as many people as I can. So that is quite a close conversation I've had with that person, and how that person has experienced this kind of a feeling that as if they were in front of some majestic personality like Yamraj or something. And then he said, in my previous lives, I've had that experience. So this life, I'm really trying my best to help as many people as I can. So yeah, there is, you know, like Nabi said, you know, whether we believe in it or not, the soul has a journey beyond, have had a long journey up to this point as well. But here we are, you know, and we are fortunate to understand a little bit more of this. And I'm pleased, you know, that, you know, in my lifetime, I've come across Prabhupada and his instructions, and I can chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Thank you.
Hare Bol.
So Edward,
Yes, Prabhu. I have a last question.
yeah, even from the previous, what we just said, anything you want to be us to expand on from our point of view?
Yes,
Okay.
please. I would like to share something. If we take, can you hear me, Prabhuji?
Yeah.
Not clearly, Mataji. You can go on to the other thingy first, device, and then you can.
I will not take long. I will not take long, just a few minutes. Now, can you hear me properly?
A little bit. Go on.
Okay. So if we take Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 23, it says, Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dehati pavaka, na chainam kledantiapo, na suswati maruta. So which means that this body, the soul, cannot be killed by any weapons, cannot be burned by fire, cannot be moistened by water or withered by the air. So if the Prabhu read that chapter, maybe he will have.
No, Balaji, he's not following this tradition at all. So
Okay.
that's why we are asking for further questions. So yes, Edward.
Yes, Prabhu. My last questions. Apparently, we all know that we have a journey ahead of us, and as far as this journey is concerned, I believe that there are certain things that we really need to do for the soul. And my question tonight is, what do you think? I mean, from all the knowledge that you've gathered over the years, what are some of the things that we really need to do for the soul in order to prepare us adequately towards this journey? Because then my understanding is that whilst we are alive today, I mean, whatever that we do, whether good or bad, in the end, we will be judged. And therefore, it is imperative that, we seek to do what is right in the sight of the Lord. So, therefore, the question is what are some of the things, the critical things that we need to do for the soul in order to prepare ourselves adequately for the journey ahead of us in the future?
That's one of the most important questions, Edward, that you've ever asked. In fact, that question was asked by a man 5,000 years ago called Parikshit to a great sage called Sukadev Goswami. It took him 7 days to answer that question. 10,000 verses. It's all in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Fantastic question. And the main point of his answer was, we have broken our relationship with the Lord. We need to re-establish that relationship. And in this particular age, which is a very difficult age, people get angry quickly, don't live long, memories are short. The easiest, most powerful way one can connect with the Lord and really help ourselves is by remembering his holy name, remembering the Lord, chanting his name. The more we can chant the holy names of the Lord, we will be really well equipped to deal with any challenge that we face in the future, because we place ourselves in the hands of the Lord and he takes control of our situation. That's the most powerful thing we can do in this age, is to connect with God through his holy names. He's omnipotent, he's omnipresent, he's everywhere, including in his name. His name is absolute. His name is as good as his form. So God has a form according to Hinduism, just like in Christianity. That form is the name of God is as powerful as his form. So if we take his name, we're actually with God, one to one. And that one-to-one connection with God will save us from the greatest danger. And the story we told about Ajamil, he was a sinful man about to die, and he simply remembered the name of God, Narayan. He was thinking about his son, but he chanted the name of God, Narayan. And that not just saved him from hell, but that took him to the spiritual world to be with God, one-to-one. And he chanted it once at the time of death. So that is the most powerful thing, Edward, taking the holy name of the Lord. That's the one thing. Not taking the name of God in vain, but to take it fully conscious of his opulence, his greatness, but most importantly, his sweetness. God is extraordinarily sweet. And that's why we can fall in love with him. We know he's great. Everybody knows he's great because he's created this creation. He's created us, and how imperfectly perfect this creation is. We can never enjoy in this world. So we know how great he is, but you can't fall in love with a rich person. You can't fall in love with a great person. You can just be in awe and reverence. You can only fall in love with somebody who's very sweet, very loving, and reciprocates with everything we do. And that's God. He's loving us to a degree which we will never understand. And if we connect with him again, we can also get that connection, that relationship back with him. We've forgotten it. The only way to actually rekindle it is by chanting on rosary beads, maybe. We chant on Tulsi beads, chant his names. What do you think, Edward?
I'm very grateful, Prabhu. I think you've answered my question. Basically, it's all about being conscious.
Yes.
Of your faith and belief.
Yes.
And I believe with that spirited consciousness, that should be able to, one should be that focused at the end of the day, because that should always put you on the right path, and always remembering, okay, I shouldn't gossip about my fellow human being. As much as possible, we should all try to live in peace with each and every one. Always being conscious of what the Lord has, has made very clear for us as far as living on this planet is concerned. So you've really answered my question, and I'm really very grateful, Prabhu. Thanks so much.
I'm grateful for asking. And your point about not gossiping and not backbiting, very well taken. If we put God in the center of our life, then actually he automatically makes all of the adjustments in our life that we need. We don't have to independently or separately try to acquire wonderful qualities, because if we acquire this one aspect of trying to build a relationship with God, he will fix everything around that relationship. It's very personal. We take a step to him, he takes many steps to us.
And I think Nabi also within the teachings of Jesus Christ is not, a lot of the same thing. Love thy father with all thy heart and thy soul. And he tried to say, I'm the son of God, but by my examples, you realize, there is a father. Obviously, he couldn't expand very much on that. But when we read Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father of all living entities. So we accept the authority of the Bhagavad Gita, and we are on par with the teachings of Christ and other religions in a way, even like I mentioned a few things about the Buddhism, there were remnants of teachings of the Vedas within that Buddhist culture as well. So wherever we can get knowledge, but ultimately, Vedas are I was just reading this book, the Upanishad, and in that there is a lecture given by Prabhupada in the beginning, which he gave in 1972. This was a lecture. He said, delivered as a lecture by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhu, on October 6th, 1969, at Conway Hall in London, England. And in that lecture, it's amazing how Prabhupada gives an example of how we are prone to making mistakes, and we got 4 defects. And in here, he says, Vedas are actually, we take much knowledge from our own mother. So Vedas are referred to as if like the source of knowledge, and mother. Only mother can know who your father is. So through the Vedas, we get to know who our father is. The Prabhupada is expanding on this. And the Vedas, Prabhupada is saying how there is within the material world, there is material knowledge. But there is beyond this, a spiritual world, and there is spiritual knowledge, which is transcendental knowledge. And that we take as an authority, on authority. And it's not something you're going to try and experiment and all that. But Prabhupada is saying, he said, he's there. We have to take the assistance of the Vedas. This is called Vedic knowledge. In our Krishna conscious movement, we are accepting knowledge from the highest authority, Krishna. Krishna is accepted as the highest authority by all classes of men. So Prabhupada expands. So it's nice to read, some of these small books, but it's a very nice lecture.
And good point, actually, Madhusudan Prabhu, because we haven't got much time because we've got a children's class going in a few minutes.
Okay.
But just to say, good point, because actually, Edward, in terms of Christ and Krishna, it's one and the same. They're one and the same. And the Christ we are talking about is no different from the Krishna we are talking about as well. So I think Christos is a word that comes from the Greek tradition, and that's coming from the Sanskrit tradition of Krishna. So it's one and the same person. So it's quite interesting from that point of view.
Okay.
Sam? Or is there anybody else with a quick question? Because we've got a couple of more minutes, but we will have to shut it down after that. But I'd really like to say this was one of the best interactive sessions we've had for a very, very long time. I'd like to thank Madhusudan Babu. I'd like to thank Sam, Edward. I'd like to thank Indulekha Madaji. Thank you very much for your input. Very valuable.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
And George, is
That's my older brother in Denmark.
Okay, wow. So Denmark and
yeah.
Was that okay, Sam?
Sorry, Prabhu?
Was that okay what we were saying? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would have loved to add a lot of things, but I'm always conscious of the time factor, so perhaps we can do it some other time, especially when Edward asked about the soul. He was actually asking about the journey of the soul. And what Edward needs to know is that the soul is ever existing. It's not that it's just come to be. It came from the spiritual world from time immemorial, trillions and trillions of years before, it's always been around and it's never gonna go anywhere. The problem is in material world, and it keeps going through the samsara, taking bodies after bodies after bodies, so it's something that I would have loved to explain it. But hopefully, maybe some other time we might be able to revisit this topic and then maybe explain it a little bit more.
Edward?
Yes, Prabhu.
Was that quite clear that the soul is eternal, as old as God?
Indeed. Indeed.
And it will never perish.
No, not at all. Not at all.
With God, because in this world, it will never find happiness because of something called death, which is simply the soul moving from one body to another body. In this world, we will never find any happiness because even if we have $1 trillion, death will make us leave. Like Madhusudan said, you can't take that to your grave. It's going to stay here. The only comfort we have is that if we again reestablish our relationship with God, we can regain that eternal position with the Lord.
Right.
And I'm happy, maybe not next Saturday, but the Saturday after, 2 weeks' time, we can just have a session on the soul.
I guess that would be really great because then I mean then I can have more time to sort of like prepare myself adequately.
Yes. Let's do it
with a lot of questions. I think that would be great. That would be great, Prabhu.
On a Saturday, 2 weeks' time on a Saturday.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Joe.
Yes.
I can see you there.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Nice of you to join us. We appreciate it.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Take care. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. And that was really amazing session.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Edward. Your questions. I'm looking forward to the next session with you.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, today I took all the time and we couldn't do our chanting and we couldn't do...
Apologies. I think the questions were the chanting today.
Thank you.
But Sam, we're going to see you tomorrow at 1, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Same platform, huh?
Yeah, certainly. Prabhu.
Thank you very much, everybody. Sorry we couldn't chant the Nashinga Kavach or the Nashinga Pranams. But I tell you what, Sam.
Yeah, Prabhu.
You just sing it on your own in one go.
Okay, I'll do it really quick.
Yeah.
Namaste Narasimhaya Praladadaine Hiranyakashipu Vakshaha Silatamka Nakalaye Ito Nazimho Parato Nazimho Yato Yamitato Nazimho Baye Nazimho Hidaye Nazimho Nasinamaden Sharanam Prapade Javakara Kamalabare Nakam Abhuta Singam Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanobringa Keshavadeta Narahari Rupa Jayo Jagadisha Hare Jayo Jagadisha Hare Jayo Jagadisha Hare Keshavadeta Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jayo Nasingade Jayo Nasingade Jayo Nasingade Jayo Nasingade Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Nitai Gora Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo. Jai Narasimhadev Bhagwan ki, Jai Prahlad Maharaj ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Gora Premaninde, Haribo.
Thank you very much, everybody. And maybe we can chant 2 rounds tomorrow instead. So
Indeed.
Thank you very, very much for joining us. And I really appreciate the interaction.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bye, George. Bye.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Hare Krishna, everybody.
Thank you, Pitamba, Ritesh. Oh, Ritesh, we're supposed to be in another class now. Hare Krishna.
What's he doing here?
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sanjana. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Hey, not bad. Looking forward to tomorrow, huh?
Yep.
All right.
Should be good. Between 1 p.m. to 3 o'clock, yeah?
1 until, about 3
Okay, brilliant.
at the most.
Yeah.
Take care. We'll talk tomorrow.
Yep, have a good class.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Starts in 2 minutes.